While he didn't respect the observers, Quire did respect their adherence to duty and waited just outside the area of recreation. The wisps only showed a blazing inferno in the shape of a giant claw, with some kind of fluted vambrace covering the forearm. Quire already had that detail from his own observations and talking to the townsfolk. Looks like his services are required after all. Ignoring the 5 other lawmen in view, he scanned the scene with a well-trained eye looking for anything unusual. The fire would have burnt most of the evidence away, but at least he had something to start with. The culprit was either an elementalist or a tinkerer. Either way, they amounted to the same thing. Someone that can produce enough energy to shatter the ground. Only their means of delivery differed. Quire waited anxiously for the observer to get out of his way so he could look for the remains of a device. His patience wore down as someone shouted from his left. "What the hell are you doing here? And why did you have to bring that mutt along?" Quire turned to locate the source. A middle-aged man balding at the front, but with a long ponytail tightly tied at the back. The toned man was clad in a faded leather jacket so worn it may have been rawhide. He sported 2 scabbards at his waist, with plain handles sitting in easy reach of calloused hands. His badge of office hung limply from a thick belt holding up denim pants that draped over his ancient boots. He looked more like a thug than a lawman, though seekers were a strange bunch. Quire replied to the only person in view not covered in soot. "You know she hates you calling me that." The seeker ambled over so they didn't have to shout. "But it sums you up perfectly, Quire. How are you, Koya? Is he not letting you bathe?" Koya growled low. "You'd be covered in grime too had you actually tended your duties and protected the people, Seeker Thirsk." The seeker feigned a grievous chest wound. "That's a low blow. Calling an old buddy by his title, no matter how well deserved. We're on duty, Guyan, or had you missed the melted bluestone and over 50 casualties?" Guyan absently bit off a nail and spat it on the ground before answering. "Your melted bluestone seems to have solved the matter I was in town for. Still, a corpse is proof enough of capture, even a crispy one. That doesn't explain why you're here, though. The observers were about to call someone in, and last I heard you were working out of Ryle, not this cesspit." "That's only a few chimes away, less, if I run." Guyan narrowed his eyes in the same manner criminals feared. It didn't work on Quire, but he still felt the keen eye of scrutiny. "I doubt it with how you're looking, age finally catching you. Plus, you're evading the question." Quire sighed, knowing full well a seeker missed little, let alone an old buddy. But he still put off the inevitable, silently hoping the observer finished before he was forced into a truthful response. "Something in the air is messing with me, and it's getting worse the closer I get to that." Quire pointed to the melted remains of the monastery before adding, "I'll be fine. Koya won't let me be anything else." "I'm sure she won't, but that still doesn't answer my question, Quire. Why are you being so evasive?" Quire flicked his eyes about to ensure the other members of the trust weren't in earshot. They were busy setting up a barricade now the observer had failed, and the real investigative work could start. He leaned closer to the gruff seeker. "I was visiting a friend. Just leave it at that." Guyan gave a disapproving grunt that only the older generation seemed to master. Quire fell into that category centuries ago, but seldom felt the need to utilize the skill. "A friend in Lanark? Have you gone mental? Does the trust know you count as a friend someone living in a syndicate-owned town?" Quire simply stared at his surprised friend and co-worker. He wondered which aspect would win out, but there wasn't much doubt. If there was, Quire never would have told the truth, veiled as it was. Guyan ignored the silence at his question, deciding it was rhetorical before continuing with a sigh. "Do I have to expect a visit from the seneschal?" Smiling, Quire replied, "I doubt it. I've kept him hidden this long." The seeker relaxed, but Quire wasn't ready to have him so at ease that he'll ask more questions in the open. This was a conversation to be had in the privacy and paranoid security of home. However, those bastards do turn up in the oddest of places. Thanks for that, buddy. I'll be watching my back for the next lunation. The observer approached, cutting their conversation short. Guyan stepped to the side so the young newcomer could join the trio, though the slight man swung wide to avoid Koya. It's good to have an inquisitor here already. I won't need to retell my findings, Quire huffed. Or lack thereof. From what I saw, you got the same information I discovered from talking to the first person in town. The observer was clearly hurt at the remark. He had failed his duties. For the first time, Quire experienced what it might be like from the observer's perspective. They were normally the ones to provide identities of criminals, along with the evidence of guilt. It would be hard to admit their training failed to accomplish that.